in the previous video, we discussed what we call the quantity rule. What is the optimal level of output for a firm if it is going to, in fact, produce? And we said that the firm should produce up to the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Now, the second question we have to ask is, well, should the firm produce at all? And we're going to start here and take this in the context of the short run. Okay? Now, in the short run, what we're going to show is that firms should produce so long as the price in the market is at least as high as average variable cost. So if price is less than average variable cost, we say that in the short run, the firm should shut down. If the price is at least as great as average variable cost, the firm should produce. So, well, why is this the case? So if we think about our profit equation, so total revenue, which is price times quantity, minus, there's your total revenue, minus variable cost and minus fixed cost. Well, we can divide everything here through by price in order to pull, in other words, to pull the price out. And so, in other words, we can rewrite our profit equation in the following way. We have, and so if you look at it here, we've got price minus average variable cost minus average fixed cost, and times our quantity here. Okay. And how do we actually get that? Well, you can imagine if you multiply and divide here actually your quantity, right? So what we're trying to do is pull the quantity out as a common term. So if you divide this by quantity and then again multiply by quantity, and same thing here, multiply and divide by quantity, then this becomes average variable cost times quantity, average fixed cost times quantity. And again, so we're just pulling the quantity out and we're rewriting it, right? Collecting our terms and writing profit this way. And so when we're looking at it like this, this is kind of helps us just to see it before we even put our graphs up here. Well, what's important is whether you can cover your variable cost, right? So another way to rearrange this, actually, we could have left fixed cost out of the parentheses, and you could simply write it as price minus average variable cost times quantity minus your fixed cost. Okay, so there's your profit. And this is really where we can start to see in the short run why being able to cover your variable costs is what matters. Okay? And so let's show this graphically because it really helps to pull everything together. So here we're looking at an individual firm in our competitive market. We have some market price that is determined by our equilibrium from the intersection of the market supply and demand. And remember that then in a competitive firm, this is also our marginal revenue. We've got our marginal cost curve. And here let's also go ahead and we're going to add in our average variable cost. And we'll show here, we'll illustrate a scenario where average variable cost is less right, at our optimal quantity is less than the price. So again, let's start off with our first rule here. So the firm is going to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Okay. And so what do we see here? Well, now we have, if you compare at this quantity, our price is up here at P star, but average variable cost is all the way down here. All right, so if we take a look at our shutdown rule, price is greater than average variable cost, so what we started off saying in this video is that the firm should produce. Now the question is, well, why? Why would this be the best way to go? Well, you've got to think about your fixed costs as well. What we're actually saying here is that so long as you can cover your variable cost, and that happens when price is greater than average variable cost, then you are at a minimum eating away at your fixed costs. Or you could also just be flat out, profitable. So let's illustrate the first scenario where average total cost is just a little bit higher. Okay. So let's say this is average total cost here. Well, here now, if we look at this, our average total cost is here. This firm is making a profit. Because the other way we can think about this is, instead of splitting out variable and fixed cost, we can also rewrite this equation to say that profit is equal to price minus average total cost times quantity. So in other words, the firm here would be making a positive profit that's equal to this area that we're shading in here. Okay. So that's this scenario here where the firm is actually making a profit. And so this scenario is usually pretty clear to people. Now the question becomes, well, what if instead what we had was that the firm has an average total cost that's higher than price at Q star? So instead of having average total cost here, what if average total cost was much higher? And looked something like this instead. Well, so what would be the difference between these two average total costs? Right? Notice we're holding average variable cost the same. What that would mean is that we have a much bigger fixed cost in the second case. Right? Remember what we talked about in a previous videos and a previous chapter in class is that average total cost is equal to average variable cost plus average fixed cost. And so if you're looking at it, then with this new average total cost curve, that distance there, that's coming from where? That is coming from our fixed cost. Okay, so we have this much in fixed cost that we're adding in. Okay, so if you think about our average fixed cost curve coming in somewhere, and I'm just going to draw it very loosely here, right? But remember, average fixed cost is declining. Okay, so if you're looking at it here, for average fixed cost is, say, somewhere around here at this point. Okay. Now, when we look at this, average total cost is here. But price is down here. So this firm, by producing at Q star, would have losses equal to this shaded area in green. Okay. This is our second scenario. Right? We said, so why would the firm produce at a loss in the short run, right, having these negative economic profits? Right? Why would they do that rather than just shut down altogether? Well, what we can show easily here with our average fixed cost curve is that if you don't produce anything, of course your revenue is zero. Your variable costs will also be zero, but remember, in the short run, you still have to pay your fixed costs. So in the short run, when you produce nothing, your profit is equal to minus your fixed cost. And if you don't produce anything, you still have to eat the fixed cost. Right? And so that is if your quantity is equal to zero, right? Your profit's just equal to as a negative, it's a loss equal to your fixed cost. And in this case, that would be this whole area here. All right, so the losses that this firm would incur, the one that has the higher average total cost curve, by not producing, the firm would incur these really big losses, right? Whereas by producing, the firm will incur these smaller losses. And again, the key thing here is that so long as you can cover your variable cost in the short run, you can either be profitable or at a minimum eat away at your fixed cost to minimize your losses. Okay? So in the short run, we look at this as it's either, you can think about it as profit maximization or in some instances, loss minimization. Right? So Q star is the optimal quantity that we're producing here in order to maximize our profits or minimize our losses in the short run. Now, that's in the short run. Remember that in the long run, none of our costs are fixed. Everything is variable. So obviously there, firms have no incentive to operate at a loss because you can't just try to retool, change the size of your facility to try to adjust and get to the right scale of operations. In the next video, we're going to take a look at what our long-run equilibrium should look like in terms of the profit maximization rule. So the second rule, instead of being a shutdown rule, that becomes our entry and exit rule.